Karen Whitmore thought she could destroy a community with a single complaint about pool reflections. She had no idea that beneath those shimmering waters lay secrets that would expose her own. Dark past secrets that would turn her from predator to prey in 24 hours. Sometimes the light doesn't just hurt your eyes. It reveals everything you've been hiding. The Meridian Heights Community Center buzzed with the usual Tuesday afternoon energy children's laughter echoing from the pool area, the soft thud of tennis balls on courts, and the gentle hum of residents enjoying their slice of suburban paradise. But Karen Whitmore stood in the administrative office like a storm cloud preparing to unleash hell. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she declared, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing at the formal complaint form she'd just slammed onto receptionist Maria Santos's desk. "Those pool reflections are a health hazard. I demand immediate action." Maria, a 23-year-old college student who worked part-time to help pay for her nursing degree, looked up from her computer with practiced patience. She'd dealt with Karen's complaints before, 17 of them in the past 6 months, ranging from inappropriate swimwear to excessive pool noodle usage, but this one felt different. There was something sharp and predatory in Karen's pale blue eyes today. "Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your concern," Maria began carefully, "but could you be more specific about the nature of the problem? The pool has been operating under the same lighting and reflection conditions for over 3 years. Don't patronize me, young lady." Karen's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I have a medical condition. Those reflections are triggering severe headaches and potentially damaging my vision. This community has a legal obligation to provide a safe environment for all residents." Maria glanced at the complaint form. Karen had typed it meticulously, complete with timestamps, weather conditions, and detailed descriptions of her alleged symptoms. She'd even included photographs of the pool from various angles, showing how the afternoon sun created dancing patterns of light on the water's surface. "I'll need to forward this to our facilities manager, Dave Rodriguez," Maria said. "He handles all maintenance and safety concerns. I don't want it forwarded. I want it addressed now." Karen leaned forward, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Do you know what happens when communities ignore legitimate health complaints? Lawsuits, bad publicity, property values plummeting, insurance companies dropping coverage." The office door chimed as Dave Rodriguez walked in, his work boots tracking small puddles from the pool deck. At 45, Dave had been maintaining the Meridian Heights facilities for 8 years, and he took pride in running one of the safest community centers in the county. His dark hair was graying at the temples, and his weathered hand spoke of countless hours spent ensuring every resident could enjoy their amenities without worry. "Everything okay in here?" Dave asked, noting the tension in the room. Karen spun around, sizing him up like a predator evaluating prey. "Are you the facilities manager?" "That's right, Dave Rodriguez." He extended his hand, which Karen ignored. "Good. Then you're the one responsible for this negligence." She gestured dramatically toward the windows overlooking the pool area. "Those reflections are a hazard. I've documented everything. Timestamps, symptoms, photographic evidence. My attorney will be very interested in how you choose to respond." Dave walked to the window and looked out at the pool. A dozen children were playing in the shallow end while their parents watched from lounge chairs. The late afternoon sun created a beautiful dance of light across the water's surface, the same gentle sparkle that had delighted residents for years. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not seeing anything unusual out there. The pool lighting meets all county safety standards, and we've never had a complaint about reflections before. That's because other residents don't have my sensitivity to light." Karen's voice rose, drawing attention from other staff members. "I have a condition called photophobia, which makes me extremely sensitive to bright reflections. Those pool lights are essentially assault weapons aimed at my retinas." Dave rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He'd dealt with difficult residents before, but Karen's approach felt calculated, almost rehearsed. "Have you consulted with a doctor about this condition? Because if there's a legitimate medical concern, we'd want to work with you to find a reasonable accommodation." "I shouldn't have to prove my medical history to you," Karen snapped. "The Americans with Disabilities Act requires you to make reasonable accommodations, not interrogate me about my health." Maria quietly pulled up the community center's incident reports on her computer. In the past year, they'd had exactly 0 complaints about lighting, reflections, or vision-related issues. But Karen Whitmore's name appeared 17 times in their complaint database, each entry more elaborate and threatening than the last. "What kind of accommodation are you looking for?" Dave asked carefully. Karen smiled, and something cold flickered behind her eyes. "I want those pool lights removed, or significantly dimmed. I want reflective surfaces around the pool area covered, or treated with anti-glare coating. And I want this done within 72 hours, or I'll be filing complaints with the county health department, the State Disability Rights Commission, and my attorney." Dave felt his stomach tighten. The pool lighting wasn't just decorative, it was a crucial safety feature. The underwater lights allowed lifeguards to see swimmers clearly, especially during evening hours. Dimming them could create real safety hazards. "Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your concern, but those lights serve an important safety function. Maybe we could discuss alternative solutions. Different seating areas, perhaps. Or I'm not interested in being segregated. I have the same right to enjoy these facilities as any other resident. Either you comply with my reasonable accommodation request, or you'll be hearing from my lawyer." The office fell silent, except for the distant sounds of children playing. Dave looked at Maria, who was typing rapidly on her computer, documenting every word of the conversation. "I'll need to discuss this with our board of directors," Dave said finally. "This kind of modification would require their approval." "You have 72 hours, Karen repeated, gathering her purse and heading toward the door. "After that, this becomes a legal matter." She paused at the threshold, turning back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, and Dave, you might want to review your insurance policies. Discrimination lawsuits can be very expensive." After Karen left, the office remained quiet for several long moments. Dave slumped into a chair across from Maria's desk, running his hands through his hair. "She's done this before," Maria said quietly, pulling up news articles on her computer. "Look at this." Dave leaned forward as Maria showed him a series of local news stories. Karen Whitmore's name appeared in connection with complaints against 3 other community organizations in the past 2 years. A homeowners association that allegedly discriminated against her service dog, a local restaurant that refused to accommodate her chemical sensitivity, a fitness center that failed to provide proper ventilation for her respiratory condition. Each time she gets settlements, Maria continued. Small amounts, usually just enough to make the legal fight not worth it for the organizations. Dave's jaw tightened. She's running a scam. Maybe. But here's the thing, she's always careful to have some kind of documentation. Medical letters, photographs, witness statements. She makes it look legitimate enough that fighting her costs more than paying her off. Dave stood up and walked back to the window. Outside, the pool continued its normal rhythm of community life. Elderly residents doing water aerobics in the lap lanes, teenagers playing volleyball in the deep end, young mothers helping toddlers navigate the kiddie pool. "Not this time," he said quietly. This time, she picked the wrong target. Maria looked up from her computer. "What do you mean?" Dave turned back to her, and something had shifted in his expression. "Karen Whitmore thinks she can intimidate us into changing safety protocols that protect children. She thinks she can exploit disability rights laws to run a con game." He paused, pulling out his cell phone. "But what she doesn't know is that my daughter Anna is a civil rights attorney specializing in ADA compliance. And she's been looking for a case exactly like this, someone exploiting legitimate disability protections for personal gain." Dave began dialing, his voice steady and determined. Mrs. Whitmore wanted to turn this into a legal matter. Congratulations to Hirsch. Just got her wish. As the phone rang, Dave watched the children playing in the pool, their joyful shouts. Carrying across the water, the late afternoon sun caught the surface in 1,000 tiny diamonds of light, beautiful, harmless, and about to become the center of a battle that would expose Karen Whitmore's carefully constructed web of lies. Sometimes the light doesn't just reveal reflections, sometimes it reveals the truth. Anna Rodriguez arrived at the Meridian Heights Community Center the next morning like a force of nature, disguised in a crisp navy suit. At 32, she had her father's determined jawline and her mother's sharp intellect combined with 7 years of experience fighting discrimination cases that had earned her a reputation as someone you didn't want on the opposing side of a courtroom. "Dad, show me everything," she said. Settling into the conference room where Dave had spread out Karen's complaint, Maria's research, and the community center's operational records, Dave poured coffee from a thermos, his hands steadier than they'd been the night before. Anna, I've seen a lot of difficult residents over the years, but this woman, there's something calculated about her approach that doesn't sit right. Anna picked up Karen's complaint form, studying it with a lawyer's eye. This is remarkably detailed, almost too detailed. Look at these timestamps. She's documented her presence at the pool area down to the minute. The photographs are taken from multiple angles with professional lighting considerations noted. That's what Maria found suspicious too, Dave said. It's like she came prepared for a lawsuit before she even filed the complaint. Maria knocked on the conference room door, carrying a thick folder and her laptop. I hope you don't mind, but I did some more digging last night. She looked nervous but determined. Anna, your dad said you might want to see what I found. Please, sit down, Anna said, gesturing to a chair. I appreciate you taking initiative on this. Maria opened her laptop and pulled up a series of documents. I started with Karen's previous complaints against other organizations. But then I got curious about something. She always seems to know exactly which laws to cite, which agencies to threaten, and how much organizations typically settle for. Anna leaned forward, intrigued. Go on. So I searched for any connection she might have to legal services, and I found this. Maria turned her screen toward Anna and Dave. It showed a LinkedIn profile for Karen Whitmore, listing her employment history. Dave squinted at the screen. She worked for disability rights, legal services, not just worked for them, Maria said. She was a paralegal there for 3 years, specializing in ADA compliance cases. She left 18 months ago, right around the time her first complaint against the Oakwood Homeowners Association was filed. Anna's eyes widened. She knows the system from the inside. She knows exactly how these organizations think, what they're afraid of, and how much they'll pay to make problems go away. It gets worse, Maria continued, clicking to another document. I found court records showing she was terminated from disability rights legal services. The official reason was ethical violations related to client confidentiality. But I managed to track down someone who used to work there. She pulled out her phone and showed them a screenshot of a text conversation. This is from Jennifer Walsh, who was a staff attorney there. She said Karen was caught using client case files to understand settlement patterns, then started filing her own complaints using similar strategies. Dave set down his coffee cup hard enough to splash liquid onto the table. She's using legitimate disability cases as a blueprint for fraud. That's exactly what she's doing, Anna confirmed, her voice taking on the sharp edge it got when she was building a case. The question is, how do we prove it without compromising actual disability rights in the process? Before anyone could answer, the conference room door burst open. Karen Whitmore stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger, holding a manila envelope. What is this? She demanded, waving the envelope. I received a certified letter this morning requesting documentation of my medical condition. This is harassment, and it's illegal. Anna stood up slowly, extending her hand. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Anna Rodriguez, the Community Center's legal counsel. I think there might be some confusion about our standard verification procedures. Karen ignored the offered handshake, her eyes darting between Anna and the documents spread across the table. I don't need to prove anything to you people. The ADA is clear about reasonable accommodations. Absolutely, Anna agreed. The ADA requires reasonable accommodations for documented disabilities. The key word, being documented, we're simply following standard protocol to ensure we provide appropriate accommodations, while maintaining safety standards for all residents. You're stalling, Karen snapped. My 72-hour deadline stands. Remove those lights or face the consequences. Anna picked up Karen's complaint form, pretending to study it. I have to say, Mrs. Whitmore, this is one of the most thorough ADA complaints I've ever seen. You clearly have extensive knowledge of disability rights law. Something flickered in Karen's eyes, a moment of recognition that she might have revealed too much. I've had to educate myself about my rights because of people like you who try to discriminate. Of course, Anna said smoothly. It must have been helpful having professional experience in the field. I see from your LinkedIn profile that you worked at Disability Rights Legal Services. That's actually one of the firms I collaborate with on complex cases. The color drained from Karen's face. I don't know what you're talking about, really. Because I have a colleague there who remembers working with you, Jennifer Walsh. She mentioned some interesting details about your departure from the firm. Karen's mouth opened and closed without sound. Then her face hardened into a mask of fury. Are you threatening me? Because I have friends in the disability rights community who would be very interested to hear about how this community center harasses residents who request accommodations. Dave stood up, his patience finally exhausted. Mrs. Whitmore, you want to talk about harassment? Let's talk about the 17 complaints you filed in 6 months. Let's talk about how you've targeted 3 other organizations in the past 2 years with almost identical tactics. Let's talk about how you're exploiting laws designed to protect people with real disabilities. You can't prove any of that, Karen said, but her voice wavered. Anna smiled coldly. Actually, we can. Maria, show her the timeline. Maria pulled up a detailed spreadsheet on her laptop screen. Mrs. Whitmore, you filed a complaint about service dog discrimination against Oakwood HOA on March 15, 2023. But according to county records, you don't own a service dog. You filed a chemical sensitivity complaint against Romano's Restaurant on June 8, 2023. But your social media shows you dining at restaurants with similar environments throughout. That same period, you filed a respiratory complaint against Gold's Gym on October 12, 2023. But you maintain an active membership at 3 other fitness centers with identical ventilation systems. Karen's hands began to shake. This is character assassination. You're violating my privacy. Everything Maria just mentioned is public record, Anna said. Court filings, county registrations, and social media posts that you made public yourself. The question is, how many other organizations have you targeted with fraudulent disability claims? I don't have to listen to this, Karen said, backing toward the door. You'll be hearing from my attorney. Actually, Anna said, pulling a business card from her briefcase, I think your attorney will want to hear from us first. Because what you've been doing isn't just fraud, it's a federal crime. You've been using interstate communications to file false claims under the Americans with Disabilities Act that carries penalties of up to 20 years in federal prison. Karen grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. You're bluffing, am I? Because I've already contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division. They're very interested in patterns of data fraud, especially when the perpetrator has inside knowledge of how these cases are typically handled. Anna stood up, her voice deadly calm. Mrs. Whitmore, you have until 5 p.m. today to withdraw your complaint and cease all contact with this community center. After that, we'll be filing criminal charges and civil suits for fraud, extortion, and abuse of process. Karen's face went white, then red, then white again. This isn't over, she whispered. Yes, it is, Dave said firmly. And Mrs. Whitmore, those pool lights you're so concerned about, they're memorial lights. They were installed 3 years ago to honor Tommy Chen, a 7-year-old boy who drowned in an inadequately lit community pool across town. His parents donated them to make sure no other child would suffer the same fate because a lifeguard couldn't see clearly enough to respond to an emergency. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen stared at Dave then, at Anna then at Maria, who was still documenting every word on her laptop. You're lying, Karen said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Maria turned her laptop screen toward Karen. It showed a newspaper article with the headline, Memorial Pool Lights Honor Drowning Victim. The article included a photo of the Chen family at the dedication ceremony, standing next to the very lights Karen wanted removed. Karen Whitmore looked around the room one final time, her carefully constructed confidence crumbling like a house of cards. Without another word, she turned and fled, leaving behind only the manila envelope and the acrid smell of fear. Anna walked to the window overlooking the pool, where the morning sun was creating those same gentle reflections that had started this whole confrontation. Children were already arriving for swimming lessons, their bright voices carrying across the water. Dad, she said quietly, sometimes the bass. By noon, Karen Whitmore's world was collapsing faster than she could contain it. She sat in her pristine white BMW in the parking lot of Starbucks, hands trembling as she scrolled through her phone. 3 missed calls from her attorney, Richard Kellerman. 2 voicemails from journalists who'd somehow gotten wind of the story, and a text message that made her blood run cold. The text was from Jennifer Walsh, her former colleague at Disability Rights Legal Services. Karen, I just got a call from Anna Rodriguez. FBI is asking questions about your time here. We need to talk. Now, Karen's phone rang. Richard Kellerman's name flashed on the screen. Richard, thank God, she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. I need damage control. The community center is making wild accusations. Karen, shut up and listen. Richard's gravelly voice cut her off. I just got off the phone with Anna Rodriguez. Do you have any idea what kind of shitstorm you've walked us into? They're bluffing. They have to be, are they? Because she just faxed me 47 pages of documentation, bank records showing payments from organizations you've complained against, email correspondence where you researched settlement amounts before filing complaints, social media posts that directly contradict your claimed disabilities. Richard's voice rose with each word. Karen, they have you cold. This isn't harassment. This is evidence of systematic fraud. Karen's vision blurred, but the ADA cases were legitimate. I had documentation, forged documentation. Jesus Christ, Karen. They have the names of the doctors whose letterheads you used. Dr. Patricia Hendricks doesn't even treat photophobia. She's a dermatologist, and she's been dead for 2 years. The phone slipped from Karen's numb fingers, clattering onto the car's center console. Through the Starbucks window, she could see people living there, normal lives, ordering coffee, laughing with friends, completely unaware that her carefully constructed existence was disintegrating in real time. She picked up the phone. Richard was still talking, his voice now cold and professional. Terminating our attorney-client relationship, effective immediately. Karen, are you listening to me? You can't drop me now, she whispered. I'm paying you with what money you extorted from community organizations. Karen, I've been practicing law for 26 years. I'm not throwing away my license to protect someone who's been running a criminal enterprise disguised as civil rights advocacy. The line went dead. Karen sat in her car, the afternoon sun beating through the windshield, creating the same kind of reflections she'd spent months claiming gave her headaches. The irony wasn't lost on her. The light she'd weaponized was now exposing everything she'd tried to hide. Her phone buzzed with a new text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Whitmore. This is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. We need to speak with you regarding federal charges of mail fraud and wire fraud in connection with false ADA claims. Please contact our office immediately to arrange voluntary surrender. Karen stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the words fully registered. The FBI, federal charges. The same government that she'd claimed wasn't protecting her disability rights was now treating her as a criminal. But it was the name that hit her like a physical blow. Agent Sarah Chen, could it be? She fumbled with her phone, searching for the news article Maria had shown them about the memorial pool lights. There it was, Memorial Pool Lights Honor. Drowning victim? The photo showed a young Asian couple standing beside the community center pool. The caption read, Thomas and Lily Chen commemorate their son Tommy with the installation of safety lighting. Sarah Chen. The FBI agent investigating her case was the mother of the child, whose memorial lights Karen had demanded be removed. Karen's hands shook so violently she could barely hold her phone. This wasn't coincidence. This was cosmic justice. The universe's way of making her pay for every lie, every forged document, every dollar she'd stolen from organizations trying to do good in their communities. She tried to start her car, but her hands were shaking too badly to get the key in the ignition. Through the parking lot, she saw a news van pulling up. Channel 7 News. Someone had leaked the story. Reporter Jessica Martinez stepped out of the van, followed by a cameraman. Karen recognized her from the local evening news. Jessica had covered several of Karen's previous discrimination cases, always portraying her as a victim, fighting for disability rights. Not today. Jessica walked directly to Karen's car and knocked on the window. Mrs. Whitmore, Jessica Martinez. Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the allegations that you've been filing fraudulent ADA complaints. Karen rolled down her window an inch. I have no comment. Is it true that you used forged medical documents to support false disability claims? That's ridiculous. I'm a victim of harassment. Is it true that you worked as a paralegal at Disability Rights Legal Services and used confidential client information to develop your complaint strategies? Karen's mouth went dry. I don't know where you're getting this information, but we spoke with Jennifer Walsh, who confirmed that you were terminated for ethical violations. We also spoke with Tommy Chen's parents, who said you knew exactly what those memorial lights represented when you demanded they be removed. The camera was rolling. Karen could see her reflection in the lens pail. Sweating, trapped. All those Times, she'd played the victim for the cameras, and now she was being exposed as the predator she'd always been. "Mrs. Whitmore, we understand the FBI has issued a warrant for your arrest. Do you have any comment for the families and organizations you've defrauded?" Karen rolled up her window and finally managed to start her car. As she backed out of the parking space, she could see Jessica speaking into the camera, and her fleeing BMW in the background. By tonight, everyone would know. Her neighbors, her book club, her yoga instructor. Everyone who'd listened to her complain about discrimination and harassment would see her for what she really was. Her phone rang again. This time it was her sister, calling from Phoenix. "Linda," Karen answered, hoping for some kind of support. "Karen, what the hell is going on? Mom just called me crying. She saw you on the news being called a fraud and a criminal. Is it true?" Karen opened her mouth to deny it, to spin another lie, to play the victim one more time. But, looking in her rearview mirror, she could see the news van following her, and she knew there was no story she could tell that would undo what was happening. "Linda, I need help," she whispered. "Help with what? Are you telling me you actually did this? You've been lying about being disabled and stealing money from community centers? It's not that simple. Oh my God, Karen. Mom and Dad donated money to disability rights organizations because of your stories. They felt so guilty about not understanding your struggles, and you've been lying this whole time." The accusation hit harder than anything the FBI or the attorneys or the reporters had said. Her parents, her sweet elderly parents, who'd spent the last 2 years worrying about their daughter's health challenges and trying to support her through what they thought was legitimate discrimination. "Linda, please don't. Just don't. Figure out your own mess, Karen. And don't call Mom and Dad until you're ready to tell them the truth." The line went dead. Karen pulled into her driveway, noting that the news van had parked across the street. Her neighbors, Bob and Susan Matthews, were standing. On their front porch, watching with undisguised fascination, Bob had been on the Homeowners Association board when Karen filed her complaint about the community pool party being too loud for her sensory processing disorder. They'd actually moved the annual event to accommodate her. Now they knew it had all been lies. Inside her house, Karen collapsed onto her white leather sofa, surrounded by the pristine decor she'd purchased with settlement. Money from organizations that had been trying to avoid legal battles they couldn't afford. Every throw pillow, every piece of art, every carefully chosen accent piece was purchased with stolen money. Her phone buzzed with one final text message, this one from Anna Rodriguez. "Mrs. Whitmore, Special Agent Chen will be at your door with an arrest warrant in 30 minutes. This is your last opportunity to surrender voluntarily and cooperate with the investigation. Your choice." Karen looked around her perfect living room, knowing she'd never see it the same way again. Outside, she could hear the news van's engine running, waiting to capture the moment when her carefully constructed life finally ended. She thought about Tommy Chen, the 7-year-old boy whose memorial lights she'd tried to have removed because they were inconvenient to her scam. She thought about all the legitimate disability rights advocates whose work was made harder because of people like her. She thought about the organizations that had paid her off, instead of fighting money that could have gone to actual community programs. The doorbell rang. Behind them, Jessica Martinez and her cameraman were positioned to capture everything. For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore was about to face the consequences of her actions with nowhere left to hide. The light she'd tried to dim was about to expose everything. Karen opened the door with trembling hands, coming face to face with Agent Sarah Chen for the first time. The resemblance to the photos from the memorial dedication was unmistakable. The same determined eyes, the same delicate features, but now hardened by years of grief and professional resolve. "Mrs. Whitmore," Agent Chen said, her voice professionally neutral despite the personal stakes, "I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I believe you received my message." Karen's mouth went dry. "Agent Chen, I need you to know that I didn't realize about your son. I'm so sorry." Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, flash of pain quickly suppressed. "Mrs. Whitmore, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "Wait, please," Karen interrupted, stepping back. From the doorway, "Can we talk?" "Off the record. I want to explain." Agent Chen glanced at her colleagues. then at the news crew recording from the street. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you requesting to speak with us voluntarily?" "Yes, but not out here, please." The three agents followed Karen into her living room. She noticed how Agent Chen's eyes swept the space-taking in the expensive furniture. The original artwork, the luxury that had been purchased with fraud money, when Sarah's gaze settled on a framed photo of Karen at a charity gala for disability, right, something cold passed across her features. "Mrs. Whitmore," Agent Chen began, settling into a chair across from the white leather sofa. "Before we proceed, I need to inform you that I've recused myself from the investigative aspects of this case due to a personal conflict of interest. However, I requested permission to conduct this interview because I believe you need to understand the full scope of what you've done." Karen sank onto her sofa, suddenly feeling very small in the pristine room. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt, didn't you?" Agent Chun's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath it. "Because our investigation shows a pattern of calculated targeting. You specifically chose organizations that serve vulnerable populations, community centers, schools, small nonprofits. You knew they couldn't afford extended legal battles. It wasn't supposed to be about hurting people," Karen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first, I really thought I was just ... leveling the playing field, making sure the law was followed." Agent Chen opened a thick file folder. "Let's talk about the timeline. Mrs. Whitmore, your first fraudulent complaint was filed 3 weeks after you were terminated from disability rights, legal services. That suggests premeditation, not some gradual slide into criminal behavior." Bare hands twisted in her lap. "After I lost my job, I had bills to pay. Legal experience doesn't transfer easily to other fields, and no law firm would hire me after the ethics investigation, I thought. I thought I could file one legitimate complaint and get enough settlement money to buy time to find other work." One legitimate complaint. Agent Chen's eyebrow arched. "Mrs. Whitmore, we've documented 17 separate incidents of fraud across 4 states. That's not desperation. That's a criminal enterprise." "It escalated," Karen admitted. "The first settlement was so easy. The Homeowners Association just wanted the problem to go away. Their attorney called it a nuisance settlement. $5,000 for a complaint that took me 3 hours to write." Agent Chen made notes in her file. "And that's when you decided to make this your career." "I told myself I was still fighting for disability rights, that these organizations needed to be held accountable." Karen's voice trailed off as she looked around her expensive living room. "But somewhere along the way, it became about the money, about the power, about making people fear me, like the Meridian Heights Community Center." Karen flinched. "That was different. When I saw those pool lights, I thought it would be easy. Just another accommodation request, another quick settlement. I researched the organization online and saw they'd never faced a major lawsuit." "You researched the memorial lights too, didn't you?" Agent Chen's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You knew exactly what they represented. The accusation hung in the air like a physical weight." Karen opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The lie wouldn't come. "I knew," she whispered finally. "I saw the memorial plaque. I read about Tommy, but I thought if I could just get them to dim the lights or relocate them, it wouldn't really matter. The memorial would still be there." Agent Chen stood up abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked Karen's backyard. When she turned back, her professional composure had cracked slightly. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you know what it's like to lose a child because of inadequate safety measures? Do you know what it's like to install memorial lights so other children won't die the same way, only to have someone try to remove them for profit?" Karen felt tears starting to flow. "Agent Chen, I'm so sorry. I never meant." "You never meant what?" "To exploit my son's death, to turn his memorial into another con game." Sarah's voice rose, years of controlled grief finally breaking through. "Those lights aren't just decoration, Mrs. Whitmore. They've already prevented 2 potential drownings since they were installed. 2 children are alive today because lifeguards could see them clearly enough to respond to emergencies." The room fell silent, except for Karen's quiet sobbing. Agent Chen's colleagues shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah continued, her voice now eerily calm. "But here's what's really going to destroy you, Mrs. Whitmore. It's not the federal charges, though those will likely put you in prison for 10 to 15 years. It's not the civil suits, though those will bankrupt you. It's not even the public exposure, though that will follow you for the rest of your life. Karen looked up through her tears. What do you mean? I mean that every legitimate disability rights case in this region is now going to be viewed with suspicion because of what you've done. Every person with a real disability who needs genuine accommodation is going to face extra scrutiny, extra doubt, extra barriers, because organizations will remember your name and your methods. The weight of that realization hit Karen like a physical blow. She hadn't just stolen money or damaged her own life, she'd poisoned the well for everyone who came after her. Agent Chen, is there anything I can do? Any way to make this right? Sarah studied her for a long moment. There's one thing. Full cooperation. Complete confession. Help us identify every organization you've defrauded, every document you've forged, every lie you've told. Help us recover as much of the stolen money as possible so it can be returned or donated to legitimate disability advocacy organizations. And if I do that, the prosecutor might consider reducing some of the charges. But Mrs. Whitmore, understand this clearly, you're going to prison. The only question is for how long. Karen nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. Agent Chen closed her file and stood up. We'll need you to come to the federal building for a formal interview. Your cooperation starts now. As they prepared to leave, Karen looked around her living room one last time. Agent Chen, can I ask you something? Sarah paused at the door. What do you think? Do you think Tommy would want me to make this right, even after what I tried to do? For the first time since entering the house, Agent Chen's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Whitmore, my son was 7 years old when he died. He believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in people being better than their worst moments. So yes, I think he would want you to make this right. But not for your sake, for everyone else you've hurt along the way. As they walked to the front door, Karen could see the news crew repositioning their cameras. Jessica Martinez was doing a live stand-up report, the perfect suburban house, serving as a backdrop for the story of how a predator had finally been caught. Mrs. Whitmore, Agent Chen, said as they reached the threshold, one more thing. Those pool reflections you claimed were giving you headaches, the ones that started this whole investigation. Karen nodded. They're beautiful today, clear and bright and honest. Everything you weren't. Agent Chen stepped outside, leaving Karen standing in her doorway, watching as her neighbors gathered on their porches and sidewalks to witness the end of her carefully constructed lie. For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore was about to tell the truth about everything. The reckoning had begun.